data that we got earlier.
And 2 minutes away from the end of that trading day, Caroline Hyde, it's me, Taylor Riggs. We are counting you down to the closing bell. Here to help take us beyond the bell, we have a global simulcast. We do it every day on this program. We have Carol Messer, Tim Stenovic, bringing together both our Bloomberg television, radio, and YouTube audiences worldwide. We parse through the most crucial moments of the day. And Carol, I have to say, another day, another fresh record high.
Yeah, absolutely. But maybe, depending on when you looked at the trade, we saw some losses, we saw some gains. We've really been all over the map. I think investors trying to make sense of the slew of earnings reports. We're going to get two big ones after the bell here, Amazon and Twitter and a few others. But Tim, also trying to then look at this optimistic in terms of the economic data, and that's provided some support to the trade.
It is, but still, it seems like a wait-and-see market when it comes to at least what those big earnings are going to say. Investors kind of shrugging off that economic data that we got earlier in the day. Still, though, trading all over the place. Choppy, I think, is the way to sum it up.
Yeah, yields were higher in terms of US 10-year, coming back down to about 3 basis points on the back of that GDP data, jobless claims as well. Guys, what Remain is missing for once is real volume here. I'm seeing volume up 24% on the S&P 500 versus your usual 30-day average. It's up 11% on the NASDAQ. The Dow, it's up too. Carol, there's really strength behind this choppy bit, it would seem.
Yeah, exactly. And if you take a look, too, in terms of those major market averages in the S&P 500, fairly broad-based, but we're seeing the likes of Facebook really giving a boost, Taylor, to the communication services sector.
Yeah, as we've been mentioning, Caroline, it's Facebook, it's Alphabet, it's Twitter, it's Comcast, it's Charter, it's all of those communication stocks that are leading us higher here as we head into that closing bell.
But on the drag down, it's been autos, has been worried about chips. As we get that closing bell, as we get settlement here in New York and across the world. Dow Jones up 0.7% on that particular price-based index. We're looking at the S&P 500 at a new record high, 4,211 is where we settle, up 28 points. 0.7%. We really saw actually, back in the red at one point today. So the managed that we see that demand drive us higher towards the end of close. Russell 2000, though, your small caps is where the weakness really lay, as some of the technology names within that index didn't fare well, off by 0.4%, 8.69 points lower. And lastly, well, we've got to bring it out to really what happened in terms of big tech, because it was big tech led higher by the likes of Facebook, by the likes of course, some of the Apple managed to give us a turnaround, and the NASDAQ trading higher on the day.
I'm going to pull a little bit of an audible because Cirrus Logic just coming out, crossing the bell here. Ticker CRUS. Stock is down about 7.8%. We continue to watch these tech companies. We continue to watch names within the semi sector. And the company talking about first quarter gross margin of 49 to 51%. The estimate is for 51.5%. But also, let me just pull up, forgive me as my Bloomberg runs past me. Actually, let's go to Amazon because that's certainly an important one.
Yeah, Carol, we're seeing first quarter AWS net sales coming in a strong beat, $13.5 billion. That was estimates of $13.1 billion. Total first quarter net sales, $108.5 billion, beating estimates of $104.6 billion. They beat on the bottom line by, well, $6. 15.80 cents versus estimates of 9.70. So you're seeing really a top and the bottom line as operating income is better. Online store sales, those net sales, Caroline, $15.9 billion versus estimates of 50.6. I could keep running you through the horse race, but frankly, it just looks like even the forward guidance way better than expected on the top line.
And this is a year where, of course, we now start to see some of the costs that have been pushed up because of COVID, some of the protection they've had to give to some of their employees, for example, dialing back down again as the world, we hope, continues on this reopening path. Many felt that for Amazon, margins is where it's going to be for the rest of the year. Net sales continuing to increase overall. And as you say, AWS, this has been the workhorse for Amazon as well. Amazon Web Services really putting out about $13.5 billion. So this is seeing more than double-digit growth for the leader when it comes to overall provision for this sort of area of web services, Tim.
Yeah, absolutely the leader. But hey, there is a lot of competition now. Microsoft is among those who are competing closely with the company when it comes to Amazon Web Services. But make no mistake, Amazon invented this category. It's not by any means close to the biggest category and the biggest segment that Amazon has, but it is by far the most profitable. And one thing that investors have been concerned about out recently is profit margins there as the competition does increase. We saw those numbers from Microsoft earlier this week, and then Google, as we know, increasingly getting into it with Google's cloud products as well.
You know, what's interesting too is that outlook, second quarter net sales, because listen, what we've been wondering, everybody, about is what happens as the world reopens? What happens to e-commerce sales, which has been so important to Amazon's bottom line at this point? We're going to be listening on their call with analysts about what they have to say about forward guidance and even more about visibility and outlook, because as we all move out into the world to experience things, what does that mean for Amazon specifically, Taylor?
You know, and you just have to laugh at some of the headlines we get from Jeff Bezos, who's putting out a comment, of course, in the press release, talking about his babies, right? They're 10 and 15 years old. It is Amazon Prime, he's saying, turning 10. You have more than 175 million Prime members, talking about that streaming. And in 15 years, that's his second child, AWS becoming a $54 billion annual sales run rate business, really competing. It's accelerating 32% year over year. It is really highlighting that is that high margin business, Caroline, the cloud sales competition, but indeed holding their own.
And if we hold on to these numbers in after-hours trading, in proper trading tomorrow, this will be a record high for Amazon. Of course, remember, we're looking for that sort of level of 3,500 or so, and it's now 3,655. So record high in terms of share price for Amazon if they hold on to these after-hours gains. Meanwhile, Gilead is coming out. Well, let's talk biotech. It's maintaining its quarterly dividend of 71 cents a share. They're coming out with first quarter revenue, $6.4 billion. The estimate, though, was for $6.74 billion, so it is a miss overall. Adjusting earnings per share coming in just ahead of expectations, $2.08. The estimate was for $2.07. So clearly, once again, biotech, some of those other non-COVID related companies, Carol, not doing as well.
No, not as well. And I gotta say that we're gonna all be focusing on throughout the evening into tomorrow's trade about Amazon and watching that trade here in the after hours, because again, some of these numbers, some of these companies, we know they've been growth companies, but they continue to blow away some of the estimates. And when you look at some of their numbers and what they say about the outlook, again, going back to the second quarter net sales number, 110 to 116 billion, that is above the estimate that's out there of 108.35 billion, Tim.
One number that I'm keeping an eye on is when it comes to guidance is how much the company is saying it's going to spend on COVID-19 costs and costs related to COVID-19. The company's saying Amazon guidance assuming $1.5 billion of costs related to COVID-19. Just think back over the last 14 months and how Amazon has been one of those essential businesses, what the company has done when it comes to delivering goods to Americans and internationally during the pandemic.
Tim, let's take a look at Twitter. We're getting those earnings coming out as well. We're seeing let's start with their first quarter revenue here. Just a slight beat of estimates as they're seeing average monetizable daily active users of 199 million, slightly beating estimates, Caroline, of 198.8. That first quarter ad revenue, slight beat, again, 899 million versus estimates of 897. That second quarter revenue might look a little bit light, 980 to 1.08 billion. The estimate was 1.05 billion. I'm wondering if the share price reaction is maybe a lighter side of some of the revenue in that forward guidance. Otherwise, it doesn't look like a huge blowout, Caroline, but just a slight beat perhaps on some of those first quarter numbers.
But reflecting what Pinterest had warned about earlier in the week, the fact that growth of users is going to be slowing down. Monthly daily active user growth rates will be in the low double digits for the rest of the year. We're getting out, people. We're starting not to be glued to our screens. And maybe, just maybe, we're not going to be looking at Twitter quite so much, Carol.
You can take it, though, with you on your phone. The only thing I can think about, Caroline, is I think about that February analyst meeting. They hadn't held an analyst meeting in years. They talked about doubling annual revenue to $7.5 billion by 2023. What investors want to know is, how do you get it? Do these growth rates that you're showing me in this quarter and what you're talking about in the outlook, does it get me, Tim, to that revenue goal?
Yeah, and one thing that they talked about was their ambitions over the next few years, and actually made the stock move significantly because the company was really ambitious about what it wants to do and how it wants to change the product. Twitter's product has not changed significantly since the actual founding of the company more than a decade ago. They've just added more characters. One thing I'm going to be listening for on that earnings call later today is any commentary
like the
about
video,
audio,
smash that like button,
momentum. We had that Bloomberg reporting earlier this
subscribe,
month
get more
Twitter was in talks to acquire
news and investing.
Sum of money.
Yeah,
Intel.
I'm just reading through the Twitter press release, and they are saying that they expect total revenue to
Ring the
grow
bell,
faster than
get notified, and
expenses in
upload.
2021. But Caroline, you are seeing some of their expenses rise
Drop
about
a kite,
21%
drop
on
a,
a
you know,
year-over-year basis. They are indeed mentioning
comment,
that iOS
and,
14.5 change as well that I believe we